When I look back at games I played through my lifespan, I really come to terms with the fact that I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Two things that exemplify how dumb I was were me not knowing the difference between new game and load game and therefore deleting all my cousin's Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles saves, and the fact that I only managed to learn English by playing Pokemon White. Well, you can imagine that throughout the years of playing games whilst being this dumb, I must have run into some hard moments. Right? Well, yes, of course I did. First of all, we could talk about the fact that in 10 years of my life with a library of over 50 games on the PS2, I only beat around 2 games. But let's save that for another video. Video games. They're hard. If you were, and sometimes even are, me, they are especially hard. And like any kid who struggles with life, I sometimes found myself struggling to get through parts of some specific video games. The first video game that comes to mind when I think of difficulty is Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers for the PS2. Fun fact, I once puked on the disc of this game. Don't ask me why, when or how, I just know I was sick and I puked on it. Lord of the Rings and The Two Towers plays exactly like you would expect one of the Lord of the Rings licensed games to do. In this specific one, guess how far into the game I got? That's right, the first level after the prologue. In this level you can play as Gimli and Aragorn or Legolas, and you basically hack and slash your way through the level, killing orcs until you reach the end boss. That end boss being this weird tentacle monster that I never beat once in my life. Looking back at it now that I've played it in 2023, I can say that in all honesty it wasn't just my fault, the game really isn't that easy. The fact that you barely get any indication if you parry an attack paired with hits that sometimes seem to not even be registering makes it hard to even play through the level itself. To my surprise, the boss was the easiest part of the level. Basically, all you had to do was spam the parry button, wait for his tentacles to be up, cut his tentacles and shoot him with an arrow around 5 times so that he would die. So that was kind of anticlimactic, but let's move on to the next game. When we talk about Pokemon, I have to mention that this was around the era that my brain cells were starting to show some function. I now knew how to speak English, I had beaten a few video games and I had some overall gaming experience to my belt. Despite all of that, nothing was enough to stop the wrath of, you guessed it, Whitney's hellbending, soul destroyer, rollout spamming Miltank. I think this one honestly speaks for itself. If you were not a Pokemon connoisseur or you hadn't played the original Gold and Silver, I honestly think nothing prepared you for this self-sufficient Miltank. This thing was level 19 very early into the game, it had amazing defenses, it had a Lumberry for some reason, it had Milk Drink and Rollout for increasingly destroying damage and constant self-heals, and on top of that it had 2 super potions to back it up. The twist on this particular case is I actually managed to beat it, all thanks to good old YouTube. See, by the time I played Pokemon Heart Gold, the game already had its age, and there were a lot of content creators who did let's plays that I fully watched with heart and soul. One common thing they all shared was that somehow throughout the early parts of the games, they had an Heracross. Having a Heracross at this point in the game would basically be the equivalent of playing rock paper scissors if the game was called rock 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 and all your opponent could use were scissors. So I YouTubed my way through all the guides I couldn't previously understand, I grabbed the Heracross and defeated Whitney using Brick Break. I don't really know the exact details of how I did it since it was so long ago, but I can remember being very happy that I conquered the gym badge and I ended up using Heracross for the entire playthrough. Let me tell you, this one right here was my introduction to rage in video games. Ratchet & Clank Size Matter's entire plot revolved around a lot of stuff, one of them being this weird kid Luna who turned out to be a robot spying on Ratchet. Eventually, you reach a part where you have to destroy Luna, and let me tell you, this boss fight, man. This boss fight. I vividly remember beating this in an hospital waiting room of all places, so you can imagine how people were looking at me tryharding on my PSP back then. The first part of the boss fight, all you do is dodge Luna's plane while she literally shoots up a cornfield World War II style. The second part of the boss fight, the plane turns into a tractor, I guess, which you have to run from dodging obstacles and other enemies that show up. The third part of this fight was the one that really got to my nerves, the one where you actually have to destroy Luna. First you have to dodge boulders falling on top of you, and then you have to shoot Luna while she tries to mow you down in the smallest platform imaginable. As a kid, I really never managed to get the timing right to jump over her and shoot, The fact that I was doing it on a PSP which had this awful joystick didn't help it as well. I know these boss fights are some of the things that make people say Ratchet & Clank Size Matters is the worst Ratchet game ever. But in all honesty, I really enjoyed the game and have fond memories of it. Of course, excluding this level, which was unnerving and unsettling to say the least. Honestly, I played a lot of games over my childhood, and I could go for hours talking about levels that I got stuck in. But for now, I think this is enough nostalgia. If you want to see more of this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of the future videos. Tell me in the comments about the levels you got stuck in when you were a kid, and other than that, this has been the Retro Den, and I'm out.